Well, actually, before we do start properly, did you get all the notes all right? Did they look okay for tonight?
Yes, brilliant. They were very professional. I got to admit, I was really impressed.
Well, that's where the professionalism stops.
All right.
we put it all into the letter, and we thought, well, at least it'll sound good before we start. Imagine I was coming to university in a matter of weeks' time. This will take a lot of imagination. It's been a while since I've been to college, but
We do have all ages, don't worry.
Thank you very much. You could have said no. That's fine. We'll go with that. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Team Talk. Nice to have you back with us. Hi Em, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm a little bit nervous because we're recording this one slightly later in the day than we usually do, and everyone's home. So this might take a lot of edits to cut out all the screaming and everything in the background. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, a similar problem. I've just warned everyone in the house that please don't go singing or just doing any outbursts of any sort for the next 40 minutes. Yeah.
No, have them in. In fact, go get them. Let's get a sing song going.
Can I have some a cappella?
Because we were going to do students, but singing is another good theme. We could do that tonight.
Yeah. That could be a definite episode for the future, maybe.
Are you guys like the Von Trapp family? Do you all have a part to play?
No, I wouldn't say there's kind of gifting.
Right.
It's just general outbursts of songs that have been going around in the head all day.
So more passion than talent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd rather passion and no talent than talent and no passion.
Yeah. I mean, there are benefits. Definitely, but when it's just the same 4 words over and over again, it's not quite as enjoyable.
No, okay, fair enough. Yeah,
No.
well, that's good to bear in mind for the future.
Yeah, definitely.
So, do you want to introduce the theme for tonight's session?
Yes, so tonight we're going to be talking about students and faith, which I think is a really interesting conversation, and we're going to be chatting with the University Chaplain, which I think will be great and super helpful for any students who are out there and listening at the moment. It can be quite a tricky time with pressures and stress, but it's also really fun as well. We can't forget the fun. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to chat about how and where faith fits into that, and how, as a university chaplain, that comes into it then as well.
Yeah, because I was thinking about Michelle and her sort of role, and during lockdown, there've been various people that we've highlighted to thank. Like we've had the clap for carers, etc. But within outside of uni life, within the hospital worlds, I think the chaplains get forgotten sometimes, and it's the same with very often we pray this time of year for the students that are either going off to university or coming to I minister in Cardiff or coming to Cardiff to study, but we very rarely ever think of the chaplain. So great to have the chance to highlight their ministry tonight. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. They must have such a range of responsibilities and things that they do on a day-to-day basis, and there's such a broad range of things that people go through in university, and definitely they must, especially through COVID and everything, that must have been really difficult to still try and provide that same care and everything as well. So I'm really interested to see how that went over the last year as well.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to hear any forward songs that are sung in the background as well. Maybe we could have an online competition. What's your favourite forward song to sing around the house?
Yeah, whose household can be the loudest when you're trying to record?
Oh, well, we'd win that. That's not a problem.
Hello everyone, it's nice to have this conversation and be with you again tonight. And hello especially to you, Michelle. It's so good to have you with us on Team Talk. Yeah, and I'm really excited for this conversation. I think it's quite timely, especially with students going back to university now, and term starting, and with them going back to university in person on campus. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Michelle. Well, one of the first things we do when we have people on is to ask them about their team, because it's called Team Talk. And so, if you had to describe like Team Michelle, the people that really support you and have shaped you, who are the one or two people that would be on Team Michelle?
Oh, you know, in some ways it's quite difficult to restrict it. It really is.
You like
I
hard
would,
questions.
it is, it really is. Because I would have to say my family, um, with my parents really, um, I think they're two extremely kind people, and you know they set an incredible example, um, in everything in everyday life. You know, and widely then I always my children, my daughter is one of my, you know, my daughters are brilliant. um One of them has recently moved up north, um and she's quite disorientated in a way, in that she's getting familiar with the area and trying to find a church and things like this. So we tend to have sometimes like a Zoom or a you know, a Bible study too.
Oh, great.
And what's intriguing is sometimes the questions asked, you know.
Yeah,
So I find, you know, all these things, and right now, and I've got a mentor as well in Alan, and Alan Jones, and him and his wife have been incredible too, you know. So I'm friends from college as well.
yeah,
I I'm sorry, this is getting wider and wider, isn't it? I got it is really hard just to
yeah.
sort of,
Mm.
there are so many people.
Mm, mm,
I think God, there's ways of putting people around you, and even like the chaplaincy team as well. They're incredible in the daily issues. You know,
yeah.
we'll always come together and reflect on things as well. So I find it's such a wide-ranging group, really.
No, it's good to have a big team. Definitely, I loved what you said there about your parents, that they were just extremely kind people. That's such a lovely thing, you know, just
Mm.
to say about your mum and dad, and that legacy is important, isn't it?
Oh yes, yes. I think that's you know, your primary. You learn without. I won't say it's just a learned behaviour. It's you sometimes, in a way, you take it for granted because it's what you used to, you know.
Mm. Yeah, it is
And
true.
they're always they're incredible, the two of them.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that's lovely.
And in some ways, your parents are kind of like on your team before you've even, like, you haven't asked them to be on your team necessarily. Like,
No,
the teammates are already there. So
well, I think the wonderful thing as well, they're incredibly honest.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And we need
They,
that as well, don't we?
oh, definitely,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And
It's interesting sometimes, you know. Like I'll say to my mother, "Oh, what do you think about this today?" Oh, she said, "I don't know." I'm thinking, "All right, thank you." Oh
yeah.
dear.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you on, Michelle, because obviously, as we were saying earlier, it's that time of year now when students are going back to university. Some are already there, some will be going soon, and especially after the year that we've just had with
Yes.
lockdown,
Yeah.
and some deciding to return home and abandon the year, others carrying on online. So, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for students going back or even starting out in university life?
I think the first one of the first things is this homesickness. I think they see the glamorous thing, oh, I'm going to university, all this, and they get there, they sit in their room and they close the door,
Yeah, yeah,
and then all of a sudden they're on their own. They you know what I mean? They can still phone their parents and things like that,
yeah.
but you know, you can't run down your sister's bedroom, knock on the door, oh, you know, can we have a chat and all. So the homesickness, I think, would be one of the first things. Um, because they're out of their own environment, you know.
Yes.
At home you've got your friends, you've got your family, you can visit somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the first few days in university, um, it's making those friendship groups and trying to make contact with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you find the
Mm.
same, Amelia, or?
Yeah, I was one of those people who was really eager to go to university just to have like that independence. And like I was really excited to see like what me living looked like, if that made sense. Like
Yes,
it,
yeah,
because I knew how I lived in terms of when I was at home with my family, but how did I live and what did that look like when I was independent, when I had my own space? Um,
yeah,
and I really enjoyed it. That was what I was looking forward to the most, so it was great. But there was those moments where, like, especially that first night where your parents have moved you in and you shut the door, and it's kind of like, what now?
Yeah.
Like, there's,
yeah,
it's kind of like you decide what you do next, and yeah, there was kind of those moments where it was a really great year, but it was especially my first year, but it was also one of the hardest years in a way
mm,
because you didn't know who you were to an extent, and like you had the pressures of um like exams and just general coursework and things like that, but also the pressures of doing your washing and making sure you had clean clothes
yes,
and
Yeah.
yeah,
things like
Yeah.
that. It's like the little things that build up pressure as well. Like when you all you
yes,
need is a pair of socks, and that those pair of socks are going to make your morning great, and you haven't washed them. And sometimes with the pressure of other things, that can
yeah,
like tip you over the edge sometimes.
yeah,
But yeah, from my own experience, meeting people was one of the easier things because everyone was so welcoming. I think because everybody
yeah,
is there for, like, they're all in the same position. Nobody has any friends because they're all in a new place. So everybody is trying to make friends with people to like find their group and find where they sit. So
yes, yeah,
yeah, I think it's kind of a very up and down ride at university.
Yeah.
yeah. Because I think, like you say, you're trying to make new friends, and sometimes you might join new groups and societies. Um, but it's nice to do the things you enjoy, but also being mindful that you're still doing a university course. You're adjusting to being,
Yeah.
away from home. Like you said, simple tasks, maybe like washing, cooking, even
Mm.
shopping,
Yeah.
and managing
Yeah.
money is another thing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? That they're all skills in a way. Um, I think as being a parent as well, you tend to do for your children without
Mm.
meaning to, and then at the same time, when they go to university, all of a sudden they got to do all these things themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. It is true. It's a
Yeah.
lot of change at once, isn't it?
Oh,
It's
it is. But like
Mm.
monetary wise as well, even managing money,
yeah.
budgeting,
Yeah.
buying food,
Mm.
and all those type of things. And time management is a very big thing again,
Yeah.
because you've got to find a balance between your studies, social and working lives, because some students work part-time on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's hard making sure that when your assignments are due and things like that, because all that adds to pressure sometimes as well.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. I remember
Mm.
a number of years ago now. Could even be like 10 years nearly. But one of the people in the Christian Union here in Cardiff, I was actually the head of the Christian Union, Ian. We had him up to share a bit about it, one Sunday, so the church could be praying for him and for the Christian Union. And one of the first things we said was, what's one of the biggest challenges for students? And I don't know what I was expecting, but I definitely wasn't prepared for the answer because he just came out with it: loneliness. And
Yeah,
I
Mm.
wasn't expecting that at all. And I think, you mentioned homesickness, and I think that's part of it. But then it
yeah,
is like everybody seems to be finding a rhythm and finding a way and
yeah,
juggling all of that stuff. And yet, even though you're all in the same boat, that can make you feel incredibly like on your own in it all.
Yes, yeah. Because I find as well, we have quite a number of international students,
Yeah,
and it's everybody comes on campus, they trying to make new friendship groups, and sometimes you're still missing home. So
yeah,
as much as you want to bother with people and get involved with new things,
yeah,
you sometimes you need that time on your own
yeah,
because you're missing your family as well.
yeah,
So like you say, it is loneliness, um and it's, do you know, it's so many things combined, excitement too, in
yeah,
that you have irregular sleep patterns because you're away from home, perhaps you're not quite sleeping the same,
yeah,
and all these things sometimes combine,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and because very often perhaps we might have students that come in just the first few days, um, and they just might have a panic attack. You know, we just sit down, talk with them, and just go through breathing.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and for them to know then when they go to the lectures that there's somebody there.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You know, that is so important,
yeah, yeah, definitely.
and just to encourage them as best we can. You know, it's not just one thing you're coping with at one time.
Yeah,
It's like a number of things, and at the same time, I think that there is you know, you're trying to make new friends and fit in, and
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
they're doing this tonight, I want to be part of this, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
So it is quite it's, well, in some ways it's energizing at the beginning of term,
yeah,
but
yeah,
at the same time it can be exhausting too, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely noticed that I had kind of a script for the first few weeks. Because you'd meet obviously everyone you were living with and then everyone in lectures, and you'd meet different people all the time. So we had, well, I found myself having like, there was a few set questions that you asked people all the time. There was like also like, what accommodation are you in? And it's like, oh, what course are you doing? Or what other modules are you doing? Or there was a few set questions that you asked everyone all the time.
yeah,
And like you said, it can be a bit draining, like on your social battery. It can be quite draining, and you need like that time to kind of recuperate almost.
yeah, yeah,
And
Mm.
it's kind of funny that you can be like in lectures or even in your accommodation block, you're surrounded by people. Like my room was above the kitchen, and then the walls between the rooms are never very thick, so you can hear everything that's going on in the other rooms as well. So no matter where you are, you're surrounded by people and you can hear people everywhere, but at the same time it can get really lonely. Even though you can hear what's going on, there is an element of loneliness to it, and I think that's something that I expected to be alone at university, and I was kind of looking forward to that in a weird way. But there was sometimes I was alone, and that was fine. But sometimes I was lonely, and I think that's something that every student does struggle with, especially in the beginning when you just don't know what you're doing really.
Mm.
Um, but I remember the chaplaincy at the I went to the University of Bath, and I had to walk past the chaplaincy building to get to my accommodation. I remember walking past every day, and the doors were always open, and it always looked very friendly. And I remember people saying that until like 2 a.m. most nights they would be open for people to go in and have like tea and toast and things like that when they were coming back from nights out. And I remember people I was friends with being like, yeah, it was so great. Like I got off the bus, I was walking home, and I went in for some tea and some toast and had a conversation with the lovely people.
Where we're based at the meeting house, so it's like before lockdown and after lockdown, you know. And we used to provide tea and coffees for students to call in any time of the day. Um, and so you build up relationship then. You know, just chatting, hi, how are you? And perhaps, you know, saying hello, and we'd run like film nights and things like that. Um, Music nights, open mic nights, quiz nights, and encourage students to come along. And it's quite easy going, and it's, we tend to do little groups so people start talking.
Yeah.
And where we're very fortunate, we build up relationships sometimes with students, and they could come alongside us and volunteer with us. So they'd actually work as part of the chaplaincy team, and that would enable us in the evening then to stay open, perhaps later, where then the Christian Union would meet there, the Art Society, Language Club. So you got a completely new influx of students then as well, from all aspects, you know, and different cultures. And like we do, we sort of filming right now, the welcome service. With the welcome service, we welcome students to the campus and the staff, and rededicate the chaplaincy and everybody to the new academic year, you know. And very often we'd invite the local churches to come as well. And you know, we'd have a service then of rededication, introduce the local churches, and perhaps like have a bite to eat afterwards and a cup of tea, you know. That's one thing. But you know, the different student societies like yourself would come in and say, oh, I didn't know you were here. Oh, would you mind, could we have like a meet and a greet for say the Indian Society, or and so it would mushroom from there, you know. But like I say, our biggest asset always is like the students that would come alongside us as well and volunteer. And perhaps they were like yourself initially. Sometimes they'd feel lonely, so they'd come along. And you build up relationship like that, and community, you know. And they're brilliant, they really are. And what you find is very often, perhaps if they've come in the first year, they keep coming back for the 3 years, you know. And then equally, other people come alongside, and they might say, oh, you know, oh, I'm feeling a bit nervous. But because the students as well have been already through it, they know exactly what everybody's going through.
Yes. Yeah.
And we do so many activities within the year, you know. We do like there's Black History Month, so we got different speakers coming in relation to that, and the students sometimes give us ideas for different evenings and things like that. We have done more recently more discussion sessions, you know, lunchtime, and the question and answers. So the students come along and staff to that. So it's a big base, you know. We're not just there as well for students as staff, because like, as you can imagine, going into lockdown, there was a lot of new pressures, even getting used to Zoom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We have
Absolutely.
Teams and Collaborate as well. So it's getting everything portable and able to become electronic, really. You know, so it's the whole umbrella of things that everybody's had to get used to. And like some students, they've enjoyed the online classes. Other students really miss the interaction. And I think the length of time it's gone on, the lockdown did. That was another, you know, it's a big thing for us pastorally, is to touch base with students. And very often staff would notice perhaps certain students might need a little bit more support. So we touch base with them, say hello, and build up, you know, we're there for you if you need us. Any problems, we come along. And it's introducing sometimes, I think a lot of students come to university and they don't realise the umbrella of support that is available, not just from the chaplaincy, but the student wellbeing, the advice zone, which guides them if they need extenuating circumstances, because perhaps they've had a family issue that's impacted them you know, submitting an assignment, or you know, there's so many different bodies to help them, and like people with disabilities and impairments, there's support available, but the student needs to go and inquire about it, you know.
Mm, mm. And I think, you know, what some of the things you were saying about quiz nights, film nights, tea and toast, all of those things, it opens up, doesn't it? Because I think when you get to know somebody, you naturally share more of yourself, don't you? Very, very
Yes.
few of us will share the real deep parts of ourselves in the first few conversations, and so having a space that, you know, they can just be them, getting to know you, is all going to help, isn't it, in terms of that feeling safe enough, feeling known and loved enough to be able to open up some of the deeper things as well.
That's it, because there's so many issues, like we've mentioned loneliness, and sometimes that can lead to the vulnerability of maybe mental health issues, where you're not going to say to somebody straight away,
No.
you know, I have these
Yeah.
issues. But like you say, building relationship and coming alongside, getting familiar with somebody.
Yeah.
You know, very often they might turn around. You can see somebody sometimes, you know, like in your own ministry, you get this sixth sense when somebody needs to talk,
Mm, mm, mm.
or they're hanging back,
Yeah.
and then you know, we're very fortunate. We've got two lovely rooms, one that we can have very private conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nice seating area, you know, so we can sit down and engage with students on a personal level. And the university as well has student well-being, mental health and counselling.
Yeah.
But very often when you go first to university, you don't realise
No. No.
that the university will provide these things. We have something called the advice zone, which engages with a student and then can best signpost them to different areas. Likewise, they'll come into the chaplaincy, and we'll talk with them and then say, look, if you apply here, you can get additional counselling. And we come alongside them as well as counselling, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
because with us, it's a more, well, it's a prolonged relationship. There's no like 6 sessions and that's it.
Yeah.
It continues, well, throughout the university life, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
I think that's essential for students, like whether you're in your final year or you're going into your first year, wherever you're at, is making the most of the services that are available. Because I think that's something that I didn't do. I didn't, I thought like university is my time to be like independent. So like I'm going to be as independent as possible. And I didn't seek the help of like services when even like the careers service, they offer so much
Yeah.
support, whether you're looking for like placements or whether you're graduating. There's so many, your lecturers even, like there's so many people who will come alongside you, and even if it's like coming to someone like you, Michelle, for a chat, or for some help or whatever it is just to make the most of the services that the university has, because they don't want to see you like suffer or be unhappy. But it's such a big place, often the campuses, that you know, I had very few conversations with my lecturers because there were so many of us, like they couldn't know everyone's names. And it's because, and I think sometimes you think then you're kind of in it by yourself, but actually there are plenty of people like yourself who are there to have conversations with, and to build relationships with then as well, because some
Uh,
people it's quite hard to build friendships.
Yeah, I was going to say, I get the sense, Michelle, that for you, um, part of your passion for chaplaincy, and you know, this might be part of you know, your sense of call to it, is just the chance to be there for people, you know, when they're feeling disorientated or alone. Would you say that's a big part of your role?
Yes, I would say it's definitely like a serving ministry, you know. Um, and you come alongside. You can't take the problem away,
No, no.
but you come alongside somebody, and for that period of time, um, whatever they're coping with, you walk with them
Yes.
just for that time, and then you see them thriving, you know.
Yeah,
And that's what it's very much about. Sometimes you don't always see the thriving because, you know what I mean, they're so busy back doing
Yeah.
what, you know,
Yeah.
with their subject and
Yeah.
sort of continuing on with their studies. So it's
I think the other part of university life that you know, can be a challenge is for some people they can go off to university you know, brimming with faith, you know, really on fire, and their journey can sort of it can take them away from that, you know, from that place of passion. For others, it can be the making of their faith, actually. It can be the time when it really comes alive, or others can discover faith in university. So, what do you think are the sort of the key ingredients that cause your faith to thrive in university rather than just surviving it, or maybe even not surviving it?
I think with faith, it's always been it's that community again, isn't it? You know, your own worshipful practice, and sometimes being with people that you can discuss, because very often in university your beliefs are challenged.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's I tell you what is useful sometimes too. I remember when I was when I was younger, of course. I was my Sunday school teacher. He always give us challenges, you know. As much as you sit down, okay, what do you feel about this passage?
Yeah.
What you know, and all these discussions help you engage with your faith,
Mm, mm.
and then you're able to explain it to somebody else.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so I think all these little foundation blocks are so essential. um and I remember talking to a student once. They'd come as part of a, say, an art evening. I can't remember why he came. And you know, as he was leaving, you feel somebody are hovering.
Yeah.
And he turned to me, he said, do you mind me asking? He said, have you got a spare Bible? I said, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, yes. I said, I'll go and get you one now.
Yeah.
I said, can you explain what size do you want the Bible, isn't it, you know? He said, well, what it is, he said, I've always been brought up to faith. And he said, I've got a girlfriend and she doesn't know about faith.
Yeah.
So I've been telling her some of the stories um, that I've been brought up with about Jesus. And he said, I love John's gospel. Well, I said, look, there's a lovely little, you know, we had like a small little pocket. And he said, oh, that's a lovely one. I'll bring it back. I said, no, this is our gift to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, you know, enjoy sharing the stories together.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful experience because it was so, you know, when you don't expect it. And you're
Yes.
thinking, oh, thank you, Lord, for these,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
these moments. They're magical.
Yeah, so when I went to university, I wasn't really, um, I wouldn't say my faith was very strong, and I wasn't really going to church or anything. I'd kind of taken a step back, and I wasn't really interested. I think is
Mm,
probably the honest thing to say. I wasn't very interested. Um, and I remember in my first year, actually, it was one of those conversations around the people we were living with, everyone getting to know each other. And someone just brought up the question of, like, do you believe in God or a God? And everyone kind of went round and said, and when it came to me, I said I was undecided. And as soon as I said it, I felt so challenged, like straight away, because I'd always been brought up in church. So for as long as I can remember, I've always believed, and I knew who God, I knew who Jesus was, and I'd always believed in that. So when I said undecided, I felt so challenged straight away. Um, but you know, you just kind of brush it off and move on. But it was in my second year then I kept walking past this little Baptist church. And I decided one day, I was like, well, I've walked past, like, it's Sunday tomorrow, like, I'm going to go in. And I think it's just funny that, like, there were so many resources on campus with, like, the chaplaincy and everything they were doing. And if I'd actually gone in, I probably would have had these conversations a lot sooner. But it was actually like my route to the bus stop, I happened to be walking past this church, and that's the one that I happened to go into at that time. And obviously it was, I believe it was like the right one for me to go into at that time. Um,
mm,
but yeah, it it was kind of something I think when I was at university I had to come to by myself. And yeah, I think I had quite a different university experience then compared to someone who started university with quite a strong faith then. Because obviously had great friends who weren't Christians or didn't necessarily have faith. So when I kind of came back to pursuing Jesus, I went back to the same friend group, but I wasn't necessarily the same, or my heart wasn't the same then. So I think that can often be quite a challenging thing for people to walk in university as well, is the having your faith and keeping like pursuing that, but also having friends who are Christians and friends who aren't Christians, because obviously you're not going to be friends with these people just because they're not Christians, because that's not what we're called to be either. And you have these founded friendships which are really good and really strong, but then there is kind of like, actually that's not where my heart is anymore, with like whether it's going out to clubs or things like that. So yeah, I think that can be quite tricky, especially for young people when you're like 18, 19. Like we were talking about earlier, you're still working out how to wash your clothes and cook your own food, and then you've also got to try and work everything else out, and it can get quite overwhelming.
You know, we have the meeting house is open to everybody, of faith and no faith. And very often we'll have different students come in, and I would like to say that they're quite candid in whatever problem is occurring, whether it's to do academically, to do with the social group, and sometimes even they you know, quite open about sexual matters as well. And it's wonderful that they can be that open and that honest, because I think it's so important that they're able to talk to somebody. You know, and they'll come in, and then very often, sometimes we will have people where they come in and they might be quite exhausted with everything, and they can't talk. See, you know, we've had some students come in and we just need to sit with them, and they are exhausted, that sometimes they can just sit there in silence. Sometimes they'll burst out in tears, and you just sit with them and just wait for the time when they feel they're able to talk. They might not want to talk at that particular time. They just might want you to be with them. You know, and then perhaps they might say, I'm okay now, I can go to my lectures. Can I come back later? Yes, of course you can, isn't it? It's just those moments.
Yeah. I think sometimes you just need like that rest.
Yes.
You just kind of need that place, this kind of, I want to say isolated, I don't think that's the right word, but you know, somewhere that's away from your usual surroundings, and somewhere where you can just kind of take a deep breath and just find rest, even if it's just for a minute.
Yes.
And with someone, I think often it's sometimes easier to share with someone who doesn't know you, because you feel like, you know,
Yes.
there's no preconceptions or anything. You can just, this is what I'm struggling with, I just need to get it out. And then you know that person can be there for you without, oh, but you said this yesterday, and oh, but you were fine the other day. And yeah, I think what you do is just offer that little moment of rest, and that can change your whole day sometimes.
That's the thing, because I think sometimes you're trying to cope with things, you keep on pushing things down. I can keep going, I can keep going. And you get to the stage, you're right, you need that rest and that bit of peace and that permission sometimes to put things down, you know, and say, okay, I'm not coping so easy as I thought I would. I thought I could cope, but I can't. We have a lovely room, it's called the reflection room. And this room, the lighting's quite low, and it depends who sort of opens up in the morning, because the colours change in there every day, and I tend to like all different colours, but muted, you know, because that room is set aside. It not just for the students too. Sometimes the staff might have a busy day, and they just need that quiet time. And in there we have a book of remembrance that we open every day. That you know, perhaps a staff member or a student has lost a family member, and they've requested an entry put in there. So that's always there then. And we have do you know, like it's not a tree, but do you know, it looks like a small tree, right? We call it the prayer tree. And people will either put a prayer or a thought even that they just need to share. Um, uh, but they got that quiet time to write it or to think it as they need to express it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I guess for a lot of young adults and students, it's probably the first time that they've had to, like Emilia, you were saying earlier about being undecided. It's probably the first time their faith has been challenged or stretched in that way. It's it's one of the first times they've had to decide: am I going to church, or am I going to join the Christian Union? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? With all the options that there are, they're making a lot of decisions very quickly, and so it's, in terms of your own personal faith and not the faith of, say, your family or the group that you grew up with. It could be a real period of accelerated growth, but it's probably definitely one of the first times I think that it's stretched, in that kind of a
I'm
way.
challenged.
Yeah.
I'm challenged
Yeah.
because very often you brought up, your family might be believing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're in an environment um, of similar friends, and you know what I mean? You know each other, you've grown up with each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're challenged and questioned.
Yeah.
And very often it makes you think, and you're thinking, right, Lord, perhaps I don't have the answer, but having the confidence to say, okay, I don't have the answer at this time, but I need to discuss this further. You know, and having that confidence to say that,
Yeah.
because everybody assumes, oh, straight away we got instant answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and even that, you're always learning. Even you know what I mean. You don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of faith too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're always stretched and questioned, and you're thinking, okay, thank you, Lord, you sent me these things again. Now here we go.
Yeah, because it's
But it's a
almost like,
blessing.
yeah, definitely, because there's often like a deeper answer, isn't there? And if you've never been stretched in that way, you'd never have got down to that answer.
Well, that's it. You would never question at that, because my questions would be different than yours, perhaps. Like Amelia, a different age group would have a different question again.
Yeah.
And it's that challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think when people would ask me questions maybe about, especially because it was kind of like quite a change, there was quite a change in me then and what I wanted to do. Obviously it
Yeah.
comes with questions sometimes, and I would always stress about like having the right answers, or like
Yes.
saying the right thing. And if someone was to just ask me a question on the spot, but also then I found that when I was asked questions, it was often things that like I needed to, like you said, John, like search for the answers to myself as well. They were things that like when I was asked it was like, oh, actually, like that's something like I don't know about myself and my faith yet, or like I haven't explored. And it was like two sides of the coin to it, really. It would either like pushed me to pursue something more, or maybe read a bit more about something, or I would just like kind of stress and be like, oh, I don't know what the right thing is to say. But I think what always encouraged me was when anyone would ask me questions is I think it's in the book of Matthew, like where it says that the Lord will give you the right words to say at the right time. And I'm always someone who like I wasn't very good at speaking, or like if I had to speak in front of people, sometimes I would get a bit stressed out and like stutter or trip over my words or something like that. So part of me was worried about that, and then part of me was worried about kind of theologically saying the right thing as well as faithfully saying the right thing. And I think you can like bog yourself down with all those sorts of things, and that piece of scripture just give me a kind of like that rest moment we were talking about, of like, actually it's not my job to have all the right answers in my own life and the right answers to the questions people ask me as well. And I don't need to have everything together now or all the time. But I know that when those questions come, if I seek God first and not just word vomit, then He will give me the right words to say at the right time. And that's not for just situations where your friends ask you questions, but in a multitude of situations then as well. Like, it's always been something that's rung true over the past few years for me. And yeah, I think that can be encouraging for other students who are Christians, or maybe just have questions and they don't really know the answer to anything. That like when you come to God with, or seek Him first as well, that He will give you like answers and He will give you the right words at the right time. And to just remember you can rest in Him as well. I think that's something that I found in my final years of university, that the things I stressed about before, I didn't stress about as much, because I had that peace that everyone spoke about, and I had kind of that assurance and confidence that was bigger than mine or my own, because it was in God now, not just in my own abilities. And yeah, that's always something that I think if I knew that in my first year of university, then I'd probably been a lot less stressed out.
Hindsight's a great thing, isn't it?
Yes, especially even at our age.
Oh, Michelle, it's been so great to chat. Thank you so much for. I know you had to set up a different computer, and work out and again.
Oh, I do apologise about that and the sound.
It was worth the wait. It was worth
the wait.
So
I couldn't get the sound at all to work, thankfully for my son.
No, we shouldn't have said anything. They wouldn't have known, actually. We should have known before we started.
You've been listening to Team Talk, a new podcast series from the South Wales Baptist Association.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.
Find us on Facebook, YouTube or Instagram.
And for more information, check out swba.org.uk/Team Talk. Thanks for listening.